Hi everybody, I'm Tim from troutandfeather.com, and in this fly tying tutorial we're going to be talking about a great dry fly pattern from Loren Williams known as the F+. Stay tuned. Let's get started tying Loren Williams' F+ pattern. This is a really great fly, and I'm going to be tying this to represent the sulphurs. Though one of the beauties of this pattern is that simply by changing a few of the colors, you can also mimic any other mayfly out there. So keep that in mind if you decide to start tying this pattern. Let's get started, and in my Stonfo Cayman vise, I have a hook from Allen Fly Fishing. This is their N103S. That S stands for straight eye, and I really like that look on this pattern. I'm going to be tying this one in a size 14, though I will tie it down to a size 18 specifically for the sulphurs. The thread I'm using is 8/0 light Cahill by Uni-Thread. Whenever I first lay down my initial base, I want to leave the tag really long. So I'm just going to lock it in place. I'm actually going to take the tag end now and wrap it back around and lock that in place. The reason I'm doing that is because we're going to be using this piece to separate our tailing fibers. So we're just going to leave that kind of go towards the back, establish a base with our thread, and next we are going to just go right to our tailing materials. Now for the tail of this pattern, we're going to be using CDL or Coque de Leon. This is a really great material. It has some great modeling, as I believe the video is picking up. I'm just going to separate around 10 to 12 fibers, somewhere in that range. So once I have that amount selected, I'm just going to kind of pull them over so they're by themselves. And then next I'm just going to grip them all together, grab my scissors, and trim them away. As I do, I'm just going to move them over to my right hand. I want them to be about from the bend of the hook to right before the eye. Once I have them there, I'm just going to transfer them over and hold them down right where I want them locked in. Now if you want to verify it, once you have them in your left hand, you can just move back to your right hand, just kind of look up, double check it again, make sure you have them right where you want them. When you do, lock them in place. And now just wrapping back. Let's get rid of the butt ends of them. And right before I get the whole way to the back, what I want to do now is I want to separate them. So I'm going to try to get about an even amount on both sides. It's going to be tough to get a perfect amount on both sides, so really don't stress too much over this step. But once I have approximately the same number on both sides, that's when I'm going to take both those pieces of thread, just pull them right up through the middle. And that will really help to separate all these tailing fibers. Let's get that thread out of there. Left a little bit up just to lock it in place. And now I'm going to really just take my time a little bit as I'm wrapping back, because I want to make sure that I have nothing but that thread showing on the bottom of this pattern, because that's really what the fish is going to be seeing. So we want to make sure we've covered all those dark spots. All right, our tail's looking good. We got nice separation going on. And next we're going to add the top part of the body. Now this F+ pattern is derived from an F fly, and the F fly really just has a thread body. But to change this pattern a little bit, Mr. Williams decided to add some foam to the top. Now for the foam, you're really going to have to cut this down into small strips, typically around 2mm foam. And his recommendation is try to get that foam so it's a little bit less than half the distance of that hook gap. Once you have it at that approximate gap, what we're going to do is just tie in one base layer and then just kind of put it in these different humps, but in a sense. And I'll show you what they look like here in a minute. So let me wrap my initial foam down. I'm using relatively aggressive wraps. Now once I have that really locked in place, I know it's not going to slip or turn. Just going to make sure it's really back by those tailing fibers. Then just wrap forward a couple turns. Pinch this material up. I'm just going to put in about 3 wraps. and that's it. Wrap forward a little bit more, bring it down, create another little segment. Again, anywhere around 2 to 4 wraps. I'm going to come forward one more time. And do it again. And at that point, I'm going to stop. I can probably squeeze in maybe one more, but I'm really trying to go for about, I want this foam up about 2/3 of the way up the shank of this hook. Once it's there, I'm just going to trim, advance my thread a little bit. I'm not too concerned about the foam at this point. And next, we're going to start to add in our wing. Now, we're going to be using 2 types of CDC for our wings and for our legs. For the wings, we're going to use CDC that looks like this. Basically, it just has all the fibers coming straight up, and you don't have a clear stem. Versus, let me show you one that we're going to be using for another step. Here, too, that you can really see that stem coming right up through the center. It's a little bit of a lighter color versus this little CDC puff. So we have really 2 distinct types of CDC that we're going to be using for this pattern. For the initial wing, we're going to go with just these ones that are just fibers going straight up. For a size 14, I'm going to stack 3 of these on top of each other. I'm going to stack them by their tips. I'm just going to hand stack them. I'm not going to use any type of a tool. Once I have them relatively even, then I'm just going to place them over the hook. They're not perfectly even yet. And I want them just extending almost to the tail, somewhere around this point. And when I say tail, I mean just about maybe 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters from where I have that tail tied in. Once I have them there, I'm just going to transfer this over to my left hand and just wrap straight down. I'm going to be wrapping back. I want to wrap away from the eye of the hook. I don't want to crowd that eye too much. Once I have the CDC locked in place, this is when I'm going to pick up all the butt ends of the fibers and trim them as close to where I tie them in as possible. And by doing that, I've now left a really clean eye. If you feel like you're crowding it all, just take your fingernails and pinch back a little bit, and you'll have all that stuff taken care of. I place one more wrap in, and next what we're going to do is create a little dubbing loop. Now to create that, I have a tool that I do use. This is one of my favorite tools out there. Anytime I go to any type of a fly tying event and I bring this tool, I feel like everyone there is jealous that I have it because it's a really great one. This is a Stonfo Elite Roto Dubbing Twister. This is like the high-end dubbing loop maker that you can get. It's just a really great one. To use it, it's really quite simple. Just going to place my thread in it, double my thread over, and wrap back through the loop. Now I've created the loop on my side. I'm just going to let this hang for a second, and I'm going to prep my CDC because we're going to be making a CDC collar here. So I'm just going to take a couple fibers. I'm taking 2 CDC feathers, and these are the ones that have a really clear stem up the center. I'm going to stack them on top of each other. I really want to make sure all their CDC fiber ends are going out the sides. In this case, they are. And I'm going to use a tool here to grab a bunch of these fibers. This is another tool from Stonfo. This is called the Stonfo hair clip. They sell these in packages of 2. There's a smaller size and a larger size. This is the smaller size. The larger size will just have longer clip mouths to grab onto the materials. I have both. I tend to use the small, so if you're thinking about getting a set, I would recommend the small. To use them, it's simple. I'm just going to grip them with the CDC fibers. The fibers are going to go into the clips. I'm going to leave them out just a little bit so I can put that into the dubbing loop and latch on. Now I'm not going to put it in the dubbing loop yet. What I'm going to first do is cut away the stems of the CDC, just leaving those fibers in there. Just like that. So now I have all their stems in this Stonfo tool. I'm going to place them between the 2 pieces of thread for my dubbing loop. Just hold on to everything, pull tight to lock those in place, and I'm going to release them from the clip. Now I'm going to be basically making some type of a hackle through this thread, but I want to space out these fibers just a little bit. I don't want them too cramped up against each other. Once I have them spaced out, just going to twist, Not going to have to make too many twists. That's about it. And you can see they're just going all over the place. It looks like just a great dubbing hackle in a sense, even though this is at a CDC. Now at this point, I'm going to start wrapping this, and I want to wrap these first behind my CDC wing, then I want to try to get some in front. If you read Mr. Williams' website, he talks about he really shoots for around 3 to 5 total wraps, and I really agree with that. That's about the max that I can get out of this. So I'm first going to pull my wing forward. Oop, almost lost that. Try this again. Sorry about that. Place one wrap. Here's my second. Let's try to get 1 or 2 more behind. There's one. I really want to start now as I'm getting more and more of the CDC fibers. I want to pull them back as I wrap around, so they're going towards the rear of this. This will be my last wrap behind the wing. Now I'm going to pull the wing back, and I'm going to place a couple wraps in front of the wing, but I don't want to crowd the hook eye. There's one, and that's going to be about it. I'm making my second wrap around, pulling all those fibers back, and if I would continue, there's just so much CDC on this that I really would just be messing with the eye of that hook, and I'd be really just cramping it. So at that point, I have my dubbing loop tied off. I can trim really close, get all this stuff out of there. Make sure my head's secure. Now there's a lot of stuff really crowding that eye, so I'm just going to take my fingers, pull all that stuff back, get it away from that eye so I can make a neat head. And after I have that neat head created, I'm going to go immediately to a whip finish. Trim my thread. Now, what Mr. Williams also recommends at this step, you might think you're finished, but there's one final little tip he gives you, and that's to take a piece of Velcro and just stroke all this CDC back. If you have too much, you can actually just pinch it off and pull it, and it will come off easily, though I like to leave more CDC. I think more is definitely better than less. So let me give you a finished look at Loren Williams' Sulphur F+. Now that you've seen the final look of this great fly, let me talk a little bit more about this pattern. I'm just going to reset the camera angle and tell you a little bit more about Loren Williams' pattern here. Now that we finished tying Loren Williams' F+ pattern, let's talk a little bit more about this fly. For starters, in the description of this video, I provided a link to Mr. Williams' website. It is a great site that has so many incredible patterns listed on it. He also gives some step-by-step tutorials and lists a lot of the recipes on there. By all means, check it out. If I had 3 dozen of every fly he has listed on that in my boxes right now, I'd be catching so many more trout. But let's get back to this fly, and as you can find out on his website, this fly is derived from a European pattern called the F fly. It's a really simple pattern that has nothing more than a tail, a thread body, and a CDC wing. It's a great fly. I have a few of them in my boxes right now, and they work really well until you start to catch a lot of fish on them. Then, like most CDC patterns, they begin to slime up, and it's tough to get all that stuff off of them. They don't float as well. You have to either apply floatant or take the fly off and tie on another one. You don't want to be doing that in the middle of a hatch. So Mr. Williams basically looked at that pattern and said, this works really well, but I think I can make it better. And he did. So now if we look at the new one, which he calls the F+, instead of just having some CDC fibers, he really bulked it up. He added a lot more to the wing, and he also added a CDC collar to it. Now you can fish this pattern in fast water, and you have more than enough CDC to basically keep it floating throughout that water column. Next, the thread body is a great body to have on dry flies, but also to increase that floatability, he added that foam to it, which also really helped to increase its profile on the water. And then finally, a hackle tail is one of those tried and true materials that has worked for who knows how many years and will continue to work. However, to make it just a little bit better, Mr. Williams chose to go with CDL, or Coque de Leon. It's a great material that has just some incredible modeling to it, and it's also more durable. So he took that F fly and he made it better, and now he calls it the F+. The other great thing about this pattern is that it's intended to mimic any mayfly out there. In the video, I was tying a sulphur. However, if there's any mayfly hatching, you can simply adjust the color of the body, the color of the foam, and the color of the wing, and have it match that natural mayfly. The other great thing is you clip off the tail and it looks a heck of a lot like a lot of caddisflies. So keep all that stuff in mind. Aside from the fly's greatness, the other thing that I really want to mention is the fact that Mr. Williams took a fly that was working, took a fly that was doing really well, but made it better. And I think we have to keep that in mind whenever we're thinking about our own creativity as fly tyers. It's great to have a fly that looks really well, but it's also something special to take a fly that's really working for us and saying, you know what, let me make it better. If you're a beginner fly tyer, please, whenever you look at a tying recipe, don't think you have to follow every single step they have listed with those exact materials. I used to think you did. Trust me, you don't. Put your own flair, put your own spin on that fly, and who knows what will happen with it. More than likely, if you fish it, you have confidence in it, it may actually work better than that original. And if it does, let me know. Well, with all of that said, I really hope that you enjoyed this fly tying tutorial for Loren Williams' F+. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the comments section below, or you can email me at tcammisa@gmail.com. If you'd like to watch more of my fly tying tutorials, you can check out my website, which is troutandfeather.com. I also have a Facebook page, and if you like that, you'll receive some regular fly tying and fly fishing updates. Well, once again, thank you everybody for watching this fly tying tutorial, and I hope you really enjoyed learning a little bit more about Loren Williams' F+ pattern.